Hello and welcome to SquishiVision, where I have just watched Cassian, and no, I have, but I've watched Andor announcement, the seventh episode in this season. So immediate reaction. I'm not here to go for some Easter eggs. Well, actually, I did spot some. Um, this is just my immediate reaction and my feelings. And yeah, this was a really strong follow episode from the kind of climactic action episode of the last season. This is like kind of the fallout, and we see everyone kind of react differently. And I think a lot of the actual meat of this episode comes a lot from the kind of reaction of characters who aren't Andor. But so we see Cyril Khan basically be having to like apply for a job now that he's been dismissed from the security group that he was part of, and he basically has now got a desk job which he really hates. And so there's a minor kind of plot with him where, you know, his mother's been like, you gotta wear this suit, you can't like stand out, you gotta look like everyone else. It's a really like it's a sort of like commentary on, you know, corporate unanimity, corporate kind of collective, you know, kind of the whole thing about the Imperial getting rid of like no diversity, just being like a drone, a worker, not a person. You know, organizations not seeing individuality, not like celebrating diversity, just seeing you as one in a million worker. You know, drones for them kind of attitude. So you know, he's obviously very and you know, he's not making a difference while he's in that area. He's just kind of being dragged along. He's just kind of, you know, sorry, I'm losing my words here. Basically, instead of being out there making a difference, yeah, to be clear, he was a Nazi, so I'm not feeling sympathetic for him. But you know, there's a commentary here that, you know, this is where he's been relegated, and we see, you know, how uninfused he is about yeah, how uninfused he was about the whole situation. It was just kind of great to watch. And then we end with a shot of him in the booth, still identical booths all the way around him. And then we get Cassian, who I guess has the next most interesting storyline. Basically, he returns back home. He tries to convince Martha, his kind of mother figure, to leave with him now that he has money to like find somewhere and hide. And he also kind of pays a brief visit to what's her name? Bix. No, yeah, Bix. Yes, he visits Bix and has a kind of a goodbye with her. She's like, you know, you can't stay here, you gotta move on, we can't like, you know, and the whole thing about how his actions, you know, even though he was like the victim the entire time, his actions basically what brought the incident that happened on the home world to them. So like dealing with ramifications of acts, the consequences. But what was most was his mother. He was like, you know, came to his mother's house, was like, come on, we're gonna go, and she was like a bit taken aback, and she needed time to think about it. And then by the morning, she was basically like, no, I'm sick of running, I want to fight in a rebellion. And she even gives this big thing about how the attack on Aldani inspired her to fight, and not, you know, at the cost of everything, she will fight, and she will, you know, even if it means that she'll die, at least she's dying for something. And she said that, you know, for the first time in all the time she's lived on that planet, she was able to walk through the square that Cassian's adopted father was hanged in, and like the new attack on Aldani has given her that kind of life again, and that kind of confidence and assuredness and willingness to stand up. And that's a very beautiful, it was a very beautiful scene, because like obviously Andor was part of that, and it's not clear if Marva knew that he was part of it or not. I mean, she did say she didn't think he understands, so it's possible she didn't realise that he was. But like, he obviously knew he was part of it, and he was basically like, it wasn't about that, it was just a robbery and stuff, but she wasn't hearing any of it, and it was just clear conflict between the kind of reluctant hero hearing about his actions, what have helped spark a new flame in the revolution, is a brilliant kind of moment that I really admire and appreciate. And then we get a bit of backstory. So at some point during Andor's youth, you know, Clem's, you know, he's getting riled up by the presence of the clone troopers, and again, this is not again, but this is the first time we see the clone troopers in live action on screen, I think. We see troopers in clone trooper armor, rather than stormtrooper armor, and Andor's kind of getting very uncomfortable by it, and Clem's like, you know, just calm down. When some other people run into the street and throw rocks at him, rocks at the clone troopers, and he's like, he goes out to them, be like, no, you need to calm down, but after he goes out to them try and calm down, the clone troopers turn around and aim their weapons at the people throwing rocks, which also happens to now include Clem, who's just happened to be there trying to calm them down, which is, you know, interesting thing about how authority doesn't care if you're a violent protester or a non-violent protester, they'll treat you the same either way. And it's not what happens. They point their gun at them, but then we later find out Clem got hanged. So I don't know if he was like taken away and hanged, or if he was shot and his body was just hanged. But either way, and there was another kind of flashback I didn't quite catch. Someone running at the troopers with a stick. It might have been Andor. But yeah, so that was a really great moment. And then we get like the stronger part, the kind of gems of this episode, which was basically the political intrigue. So we had a bit between Mon Mothma and Luthen, but also Mon Mothma's childhood friend / banker, whose name is Tay Kolma, played by Ben Miles. So basically she goes to visit Luthen and is like, were you responsible for this attack? And, you know, they're both trying to like hide what they're talking about because the driver spy is outside, and even though he's outside and they're inside, they have to like have smiles on their face while they're kind of accusing each other of things and like using political innuendo. I always love political innuendo things. I mean, in the words of Wei Yun in Star Trek, oh, the cloak and dagger, the innuendo, kind of all that thing. He's all like, you know, she's like, oh, you made it worse, now you've done this attack, the Empire is going to start hurting people, it's going to start being more oppressive. And he's like, well, that's the point. Like, people become complacent living under oppression. They've been choking under the oppression. You have to make it worse before it gets better, because you've got to provoke the oppressors to be more, to the only way that made the oppressors think the only way they can keep, you know, the only way they can keep the hand in control, you know, keep control and keep the hand on things is by being more violent. But by being more violent, it's more obviously the bad guy. And that's actually quite interesting. It's a really good kind of sequel to the prequels, where really it showed that Palpatine's rise of power wasn't an invasion. He took over because he convinced people that they needed the extra security of an empire and a dictatorship, and that's how he got power, by convincing people they needed something they didn't need, and they willingly gave him the extra power. So at no point was it like this blatant invasion which people would not have resisted, people would have resisted to. He maneuvered a situation that gave him that power. So if I'm a bit like lightheaded, I'm being a bit unwell this week, so I'm still kind of recovering. I need to probably go to have a nap after this. I'll at least rest my head down. And then Mon Mothma's party, she's trying to get some funding so she can help like fund the rebellion, but she can't blatantly get money out of her bank account without her being suspicious. So she's like she meets with a banker friend who she wants help but getting the money for her, but under the disguise of it being a charitable organization. And she's like, oh, as long as everyone thinks I'm just like making a political nuisance, they won't bother digging too deep. They'll just think this is the extent of what I'm doing. But she's like, you know, she's trying to like weed out whether or not the banker friend Tay Kolma was trustworthy or not, and like Tay is the one who makes the first move, and he's like, actually, I don't think I can help you because I'm actually quite a radical political person. He thinks Mon Mothma is actually pro-Empire, and Mothma's like, actually, no, I'm not pro-Empire. I'm like more politically radical than you are. But even like it's a very tense situation because having a discussion at a party. But even then, you're never quite sure what each of us saying. Like you're never quite sure who everyone's intentions are. Like he was always suspicious of what she was meaning. She was very much trusting what he was saying, maybe because she had to be. But like he could basically be lying about where his allegiances were. It was very kind of tense scene in that sense. Also, I don't know if it says here what her name is, but the actress who plays Mon Mothma's daughter does a really good job of being an awkward teen. Like she literally walks up to both Mon Mothma and Tay, trying to ask permission to like be able to leave the party, and like Tay's trying to make small talk with her, and she's like forcibly being polite with her answers because obviously she's a daughter of a politician. She knows how she's meant to act at public events, but she's like, you can tell she's like incredibly uncomfortable the entire time. Like isn't making eye contact, it's kind of like just shy looking in the distance, she's fidgeting. Honestly, I've never seen I've never seen a young person act so naturally uncomfortable without it it was like literally like I felt that level of social awkwardness. Like that was a brilliant job. I appreciate that. And you have a big sorry, I am audio cut out for like half a second minute. The other political thing was between the ISB agents. So like, what's her name? So Denise Go, who plays Dedra Miro, she's still trying to do her whole thing about trying to catch the rebels and like look for patterns. I think she was told off earlier for doing, but she goes about it a different way, and she gets the evidence that there's a pattern, and the pattern is that the rebels aren't doing crimes sector by sector, they're doing crimes across sectors, but no one's sort of noticed the pattern because they're looking at their data. They like be very like rigid with their data and the sectors and the information, and so because they're looking at because all the officers in the security bureau are just looking at their own data, not sharing between them, no one's spotting the pattern. But she's like, actually, no, there's a pattern if you cross things over. And she goes again, she gets the data, and then the other ISB agent is like, oh, she's doing it again, kind of thing. And she actually like full on Ace Attorney counter argues his whole thing, being like, well, no, actually, this is what I was doing differently. I was making sure I had evidence. I was using the kind of new Security Act deal, and was basically using his initiative and like thinking forward. And like Anton Lesser's character, who again I love Anton Lesser as an actor, playing Major Partagaz, was like, yep, you're absolutely right to think that. That's a very good kind of way of thinking. Clearly you're like showing more initiative than everyone else is, and the way that they're speaking as well, like he was like you can tell he was like not willingly giving her permission to defy him. He's wanting to see how far she would go first. So he was like, when she was like, oh, I think you're wrong, she was like, oh, you think I'm wrong, do you? Or and even was like, I wonder how more effective the ISB would be if everyone acted the same way that Miro is acting. I have to think about that. I just love that whole thing. And then yeah, he's like got attitudes in that entire time. Like that was a great like aspect. But then obviously he gives that kind of cryptic warning that she needs to watch her back because maybe she's being a bit too ambitious and she's going to make other people like kind of feel attacked. That was a great moment. Also, we get to see Wolf Yularen in physical media for the first time since A New Hope. So, A New Hope is for Robert Clark. Then he was voiced by Tom Kane in the Star Wars, The Clone Wars, and Star Wars Rebels, which is where we kind of get the most characterization from him because he's a background actor in A New Hope. But now he's back in a more kind of prominent role. So interesting to see kind of how he is. It's a bit of a shame because obviously he was a good guy in the Clone Wars, but then obviously he's now a Nazi. So yeah. Oh my god, Sam Witwer voiced the Shore Trooper who arrests Andor on the planet today. Did not realise that. But that makes a lot of sense. Well, no, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but like, now, yeah, I mean, he's a brilliant voice actor, so I guess, you know, he would have tried to like not make it sound like him, but there was like a lot more characterization in that kind of, in his voice there, so that was kind of a nice thing. Yeah, no, this was a great episode. Like, it wasn't, oh yeah, I should also add that Andor's story ends with him being arrested apparently for 6 years. Basically because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and a shore trooper thought he was with the protesters, didn't really care one way or the other if he was or not really, didn't bother checking that far. He's like, oh, he was dressed similarly, and that was all his enough. And obviously there is this obvious parallel and analogy here about, you know, Diego Luna's a person of colour, and so, you know, no one's looked too deeply into that. It gets a lot of like, it's very comparative to how Clem died. So yeah, I mean, that was, yeah, that was how they chose to end the episode, and it was like, that felt so real. Like, that felt like the exact thing that kind of happened, that just because this guy's in the wrong place at the wrong time, he's trying to hide from the Empire. The Empire's still gonna suffocate him, even though they're not actually after him. It's just because he's just for being him. So yeah, this was a good episode. Like, it was very, there was a lot of different plots which didn't really match each other, but it was fine because obviously now it's continuing on from the climax of the previous episode. So it's kind of like everything in the previous episode was kind of building towards this one point, and now it's all like fractured out, and we're seeing how it's affected everyone. I was reacting, and I really love the aspect, the kind of attitude that, I mean, I love the kind of narrative they're going for, and the concept of visiting of whether or not you need to push an oppressive force to be more oppressive before you can build up the support to actually take it apart, and like this, how you build up a resistance to, basically this show is all about how you build up a resistance to a fascist oppressive regime. So yeah, that's my reaction. I really love this episode. I think it was really grounded. Everyone's like throwing the A game of the acting. I'm gonna go to bed because I'm feeling my illness coming back. Thanks for watching this reaction, and hopefully tomorrow I'm gonna react to the next Star Trek episode. So I'll see you guys then.